On today's Locked On Texan podcast, we dive into a lot of mock drafts that have a tackle being selected number 3 overall, and we hear from another NFL prospect. But before we dive into the conversation, Cody, start this Wednesday episode off right.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of the Locked On Texan podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Blue Now. This Mother's Day, give your mom something she will treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNow.com, and Locked On Sports listeners get $50 off $500 or more. Use promo code Locked On at checkout. Cody, we have a very exciting show today. Hearing from another TSU Tiger. Boy, the TSU Tigers are have an opportunity to do something they have not done in a very long time, and not only for that university, but for HBCUs. Get drafted this year in the NFL, where I think this is a great year due to COVID restrictions and teams having an opportunity to really do a much better job with scouting. So we had Michael Betajoe on last week. Now we will have Jonathan Giles of the TSU Tigers on today's episode. But before we dive into that, Cody, and shout out to Sarah McCoy, who is always in the YouTube comments. She's been going back and forth between whether it had be Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu, but she wants a tackle with the number 3 overall pick. I've seen a lot of NFL mock drafts, whether that be from the top guys like a Todd McShay or, at the local level where they are really big on drafting a tackle with the number 3 overall pick in Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu. And I'll just go ahead and say this and I'll pass it over to you. I don't think that drafting a tackle at number 3 is the right decision to do.
Hell no. And another person you forgot to mention, and he did an awesome job here on this show. We had him on Monday. Your guy Austin Gale from Pro
Gale.
Football Focus. And, you know, I love the interview, but I just do not see the Texans taking a tackle with their top overall pick because, look, first and foremost, I don't know if everyone understands that the Houston Texans, they are already set at their tackle positions. You have Laramie Tunsil, who is arguably, if not the best left tackle in the game, and you also have Titus Howard, who I'm gonna just go out on the limb and say is one of the most underrated tackles in the game. And yeah, I understand Titus Howard did not look so great for a majority of last season, but that was because they kept switching him all around the offensive line, especially putting him at the guard position, and he is not a guard, he is a tackle. So I just don't understand everyone's narrative on why the Texans should be so hell bent on drafting one of the tackles. And by the way, this is a great class to get a tackle. Like Evan Neal is a great prospect, but that would not be in the Texans' best interest with that number 3 overall pick. Hell, not even at the number 13 overall pick in next week's draft. And John, when I take a look at the need at the secondary position, when I take a look at the need for the defensive front, there are so many ways the Texans can actually use those top 2 picks in order to make sure that they nail this draft, which is for the 150th time, one of, if not the most important draft in this franchise history.
Yeah, and I'll put it like this. When we look at the tackle prospects, I think they are 2 great prospects to, bring in, right? Now, Evan Neal, if you draft him, then where would he be going? Right tackle. Same for Icky. If you bring him in, he will be also going to right tackle. And do I think right tackle is the most Do I think that position is what the Houston Texans need to fix the most on an offensive line? No. I definitely think it's the guard. Now, I've said on this show before, I've also have some mock drafts to where at 3, I'm sold on Sauce Gardner. At 13 is where I would understand if Houston looks to address the guard position, whether that be Zion Johnson or Green out of Texas A&M, who, by the way, I think he's a great athlete that Houston could really benefit from bringing him in and playing him in that interior guard position. But overall, I can understand why people would want to draft a tackle, Cody, simply because Houston has not been able to provide a pop or get a push for their quarterbacks or running backs in the last couple of years, right? And so they're traumatized. They wake up. It's kind of like that Kevin Durant and D Wade commercial, that Gatorade
Oh
commercial,
yeah, I remember
where you
that.
wake up out your nightmare sweating from a bad play. So I can totally get that and understand it. But if you really want to look at what Houston can do in this offensive line, hey, listen, I will look at Adarian Kennard later in the draft. And I think he's a player that Houston could benefit drafting maybe day 2 or day 3 and sliding him in to kind of help with that interior offensive line position, maybe with the opportunity to play some right tackle. But any of these premier tackles that you're going to draft right now, the reason why overall I wouldn't necessarily look at them at the number 3 overall pick is because you're going to change their position in the sense they're not going to be playing left tackle. They will be playing right tackle because you already have Larry Tunsil, who is committed. So in that sense, go ahead and let's go ahead and leave Titus Howard out there at right tackle. Hopefully that's what Houston decides to do, and I think that's the smartest decision. And then now you start addressing your interior offensive needs, maybe at 13, maybe in day 2 or day 3 of the NFL draft.
And even if they do go out and get Iquanu or Neal, it's not going to help what they really need on their offensive line, John. Like you just mentioned, that interior offensive line. So I don't see it. I will do want to put this out here, prior to Laramie Tunsil, and he played a big factor in this. Prior to Laramie Tunsil recommitting to the Houston Texans at least for another season, we were on the side, well, at least John was on the side of drafting an offensive lineman, drafting an offensive tackle with that number 3 overall pick. But now, since he is back in the equation, like I mentioned, at least for the 2022 season, this should be an easy no-brainer for the Houston Texans. Don't worry about a tackle. Go out and get and draft a position that you really, really need.
Mother's Day is coming up, and who doesn't want to be a good son or daughter for their mom? And whether she prefers a statement piece or everyday subtle elegance, BlueNile.com has fine jewelry options for every mom. Shop high-quality classic diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, or gemstone pendant necklaces. Who doesn't want to be a good child? And at BlueNile.com, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at the price you won't find at traditional jewelry stores. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Blue Now has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Mark Mother's Day down with something enduring, a classic diamond stud earring, elegant tennis bracelet, or a birthstone pendant. So much more at BlueNow.com. And this Mother's Day, give your mom something special she will treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNow.com and Locked On Sports. Our listeners are getting $50 off 500 or more. This podcast is exclusive, only good through Mother's Day. Use promo code Locked On. That's code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in a discreet packaging, so they won't give anything away of what's inside, keeping that secret safe. Shop stress free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now for a big announcement. Starting Thursday, April 28th, tune into the Locked On NFL's Draft Live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft with all 3 days of real time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. And for those of you dying to know who your team will take, catch Odyssey and Locked On's NFL Mock Draft Special, hosted by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show all week leading up to the very first pick. Welcome back, Locked On Texan fans. And as promised, another NFL draftee hopeful, Jonathan Giles, a player that attended TSU, attended Texas Tech, played with Patrick Mahomes, and we'll get into that. Also spent some time in the SEC over with the LSU Tigers as well. So he's a Tiger, whether it be SEC or the SWAC. But welcome to the Locked On Texan podcast. Jonathan, how's it going?
It's going good, man. Thank you for having me on, man. I really truly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us. You went to Elkins High School, right?
Correct.
Played quarterback over at Elkins from Mo City. So I want you to finish this line. Before we get started talking about the process, I want you to finish this rap line. You ready?
All right.
Slow, loud, and banging, all in my trunk.
Back to Lobby.
Come on, finish that line before we get started.
All right, there. Come on now. I don't gotta finish it.
Everybody know. If I don't know who that is from outside of Texas, that's Zero, the Mo City Dun. We're talking to one of the Mo City Duns of sports, Jonathan Giles. I want to ask you a quick question. Let's go ahead and hop into the question. From the Big 12 to the SEC to the SWAC, what lessons have you learned playing in 3 great conferences?
Well, first and foremost, all 3, especially playing at the SEC level, which is to me is the best conference in football, is being consistent. Everybody is talented. To play in the SEC, I mean, you have to be talented. I mean, most of the guys are 4 and 5 stars. I mean, I've never seen so many 2nd and 3rd stringers that was 5 stars. And so the thing about being there is you have to be consistent. Every single day you have to go out, whether it's practice, game, or even just off the field, whether it's in the weight room. You always have to be consistent in your work ethic and working hard because, like I said, there's so many 5 stars behind you that anybody can take your spot. So the main thing I learned from Coach O and Cliff Kingsbury is being consistent every day.
Jonathan, speaking of your career, not even one of your best season took place during the 2016 season when you were still playing for the Texas Tech Red Raiders, and you finished that season with 1,158 yards, 69 catches, a dozen touchdowns. What was different for you that season? Because that was the year you showcased the ability to be a team's #1 wide receiver.
Oh man, that year was magical. Of course, I had Patrick Mahomes, so that made things a lot easier having a guy like him who's had so much success in the NFL. But everything just clicked. I remember that offseason going into the season. I mean, I can tell you how many times we used to go out and run around, throw the ball, just get that connection ready. So all that, as you can see, paid off throughout the season. And like I said, Pat Mahomes is an unbelievable quarterback. So he made a lot of things easier for me. And so, like I say, now we still very close. We keep in contact every now and then. But that season was so magical, man. And that's something I even still, to this day, watch games. So it was unbelievable.
How was it like playing with Pat Mahomes? How was that experience? Because you also had an opportunity to catch passes from Joe Burrow. So speak about just in your collegiate career, playing with one of the most talented quarterbacks I think a lot of people has ever seen in Patrick Mahomes. And then when we look at the greatest single season from a quarterback in Joe Burrow, how has that kind of impacted your day-to-day grind as well as a receiver?
Oh man, I mean, it took me a while to really just sit back and think about. Like I play with some NFL stars, going from Patrick Mahomes, who won a Super Bowl MVP, then going to Joe Burrow, who won the Heisman, who was just in the Super Bowl, and then a lot of people don't mention, don't think about it, but I actually played with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Terrence Martin, Clyde.
Crazy room of receivers.
It's just crazy how fortunate and blessed I am to be able to be in the same, not only field, but in the same room as those guys, working out every day, practicing. And so I've learned a lot from all those guys. And so it's crazy how my career I've been surrounded basically all my career by NFL stars down today. So it's unbelievable, and I'm very thankful for that.
When you talk about the wide receiving core that you played with at LSU, you mentioned the quarterbacks that you actually had an opportunity to play alongside with as well. When you see them go on to the NFL and accomplish the things that they were able to accomplish so short in their career, do that give you even more motivation to go out there starting this year to showcase that, look, that's them, but I could also go out there and put on a good show on the big stage as well?
Oh, yo, absolutely. It gives me a lot of motivation just to see how they come from right where I came from, being at LSU and Texas Tech, and then seeing them perform at a high level in the NFL. It brings me motivation and also hope to just say, like, if they can do it, I can do it, because I was in the same shoes as they were. And so just watching them, like, I don't think I missed any Cincinnati Bengals or Vikings games. And same thing goes for the Chiefs. My parents are Chiefs fans, so we always had them on every Sunday. So just seeing how they're having success in the NFL, it brings me hope and joy, just because I know I was in the same shoes as them, and hopefully to be in the same shoes again as them in the next level.
Now, you mentioned your parents and how they're Chiefs fans. Able to find out that your dad was a video coordinator over at TSU, correct?
Yes, correct.
And that you grew up on that TSU campus, and you kind of always primed and prepped to be a Tiger. I found this great quote that said, your dad worked there for 21 years as a coordinator. If he was up there from 8 to 5, that meant you were up there from 8 to 5, running around at 6 years old. What has playing at TSU meant for you and your family?
Oh, that's home. It was an unbelievable experience. It's something that I'll never forget. Just because, like I said, my dad was a video coordinator at TSU, so he did all the sports. So if I was playing on Saturday, he was working on Saturday. So I think through my first couple years in college, being at LSU and Tech, I think he only was able to come to like four or five games in total. Whereas if going to TSU, I would see him at practice, meetings, all the games, and then I'm 30 minutes, 25 minutes away from home, so I got to see my family every single day. So it was good to be back at home where it all started, and so I was able to see everybody, cousins, aunties, everybody was there. So it felt good to be able to see them every single day, every single weekend, opposed to maybe 5 games out of a season. So it was unbelievable just to have the experience being back at home at TSU.
Now, I do, Cody, if you don't mind, I have a quick question. Let's talk about your game a little bit. Are you an inside receiver, outside receiver? What are some of the aspects of your game that if you're out on that field on Sundays now, because that's what we're looking forward to, that no matter who's in front of you, you'll be able to win those in the trenches battles as a receiver?
Well, starting off when I played quarterback in high school, so when I got to Texas Tech, Coach Eric Morse was my receiver coach, and it was talks about going to outside. Where eventually it moved me to slot, and I played slot pretty much throughout my whole entire college career. Sometimes at LSU they put me at outside along with at TSU, but majority of the time I'm a inside slot receiver who's very good at route running. That's one of the main things I pride myself on is being able to get open, especially at the next level, because it's nothing but man-to-man. Basically, is all you see. So being able to get that separation and route running is something I pride myself on.
Jonathan, you are, I think, maybe the third prospect from an HBCU school that we actually had an opportunity to talk to. You already know one guy really well, in Michael Badejo. He was actually the first guy that we had an opportunity to do this series with. But Jonathan, for you to go to a HBCU school and to still have NFL teams show interest in you ahead of the NFL draft, how important is it for you as someone to come from an HBCU school to still have NFL teams call you? Because I'm pretty sure you know the story by now. Last year, the entire 2021 draft class did not feature a prospect that came from an HBCU. Now this year, it seems like there are a lot of guys that are giving a fair opportunity this year.
Right, and it's crazy because I remember when I first got to TSU, a lot of guys was just always asked me how was it been at the bigger levels, because to their mind it was like, well, I'm coming from HBCU, so I'm already behind the ball. So I'm trying to have a good year, then leave and go up to the next level. Like the bigger level in college, which is you're starting to see now, especially come out of HBCUs, is guys that they have one good year and then they'll try to go to a bigger school just to get that publicity to make it to the next level. But I think one of the main things that helped was Dion. Dion came in at Jackson State, and then you had Eddie George go at Tennessee State, and those guys have really promoted HBCUs. They shining light on HBCUs because we really have some great talent at the HBCU level. So what they're doing is unbelievable. I think they play a big part and a big role in what we are doing right now.
Jonathan, you are from Houston. I gotta ask you this question. Are you or have you ever been a fan of the Houston Texans? And I'm gonna give you some grace because I understand. And look, you're talking to two guys that's been around this team almost every day over the last 2 years, but I understand the last 2 years has been pretty hard. But have you ever been a Texan fan?
I have been a Texas fan. It's crazy because one of my favorite receivers besides Devontae Adams is D Hop, and so. Of course, when you have a favorite guy, you're going to support that team. Just naturally you're going to support that team. So I have been a fan of the Texans over the years, but it kind of died down a little bit. But it ain't nothing like hating anything. Like I said, that's a home team, so I'm always have love for them. But it's not the same as it was when D Hop was on the Texans.
I bet a lot of Texans fans that's watching this right now can attest to that. Really
you're not in that boat by yourself. That's pretty much a lot of Texan fans, and right now they are looking for some hope to believe in this franchise, which I think they're going to do a pretty good job in the next 2 years to get that feel back around that franchise.
Right, exactly.
Jonathan, last question before getting out of here. I like to ask this question to all prospects. If an NFL scout runs across this podcast and they're listening to you, they're enjoying you, and if you could just make one last pitch to that scout to give them an opportunity to take a chance on you literally in the next 9-10 days or so, what would your final pitch would be?
Well, just you'll be taking in a guy who's very humble, who loves the game of football, who loves the game of sports in general, and who just loves to compete. He's gonna grind every single day. He's gonna bring his best effort every single day, no matter what, and just be a great guy in the locker room and off the field.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Jonathan Giles of the TSU Tigers here in Houston. Thank you for stopping by today's show. We would definitely like for you to promote yourself on, Instagram or Twitter, whatever your social media. So wherever we can follow you, please let the people know.
Sir, thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Well, where can people follow you on Twitter and Instagram, wherever your social media is?
_ J Giles 0, and then on Twitter is _ Jonathan Giles 0.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jonathan, and good luck, man. We'll be rooting for you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thanks for making Locked On Texans your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome in, Locked On Texans listeners. What a great conversation we actually just had with Jonathan Giles of the TSU Tigers. Before we get out of here for today's show, a couple of talking points that I think are interesting. Number one, the Pittsburgh Maulers head coach Kirby Wilson and the releasing of running back Davion Smith over pizza. The Pizzagate. That clip went viral, which, by the way, for an organization that I think is trying to, really become solidified, be the real spring football league that I think people want to see. Football is so universal and big now that year-round football, I think, will become more popular. Got the XFL coming back soon. That's being operated and owned now by The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, and so that'll be interesting. But back to it, I kind of think that clip going viral may not have may not do it a service. I think it may have did a disservice because of the message it sent did come off like the coach gave a damn about the player. And overall, pizza versus chicken salad. I mean, that's always gonna win, right? That's pizza versus chicken salad is always gonna go in a dub category for pizza. But that happened over the weekend. Debo Samuel, he's getting death threats. And by the way, guys, if you're gonna be a fan, don't be a fanatic. Don't be a crazed death threat sending, crazy in the comment type of fan. Hey, if the player moves on from your franchise, just love him and respect him for what he did for your franchise, even if you guys came up short. AJ Brown is also being called a diva, something that I never thought we would see in a sentence. AJ Brown and diva, death threats, Debo. I think all of that is crazy and ridiculous, Cody. But do you see Houston maybe kind of poking around a little bit, trying to figure out whether or not their next marquee receiver is currently unhappy with their franchise and want to kind of poach him away?
There's two ways I'm looking at this, John. First and foremost, I think the Houston Texans have the ammunition to actually go out and execute a trade for both Samuel and Brown. And this conversation is more so towards Debo Samuel, only because I highly doubt the Texans will be able to finesse the Tennessee Titans into sending draft picks back in exchange for A.J. Brown, only because, of course, they were in the same division, Brown being a part of the Tennessee Titans. But I will be okay with that because when you take a look at what we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, especially over the past week, hearing both Nick Caserio and Lovie Smith come out and fully endorse Davis Mills, giving him the keys to the franchise in 2022. We have been fans. They've been saying it as well. Other reporters have been saying it as well. If you're going to give the keys to Davis Mills, build a good team, build some weapons around him. And I'm not going to lie. Debo Samuel at 26 years old, coming to the city of Houston, playing alongside Brandon Cooks, so he's not going to be, the only receiver out there making moves. And you also got another young buck in Nico Collins, and you got a quarterback with a lot of potential. And Davis Mills, I don't know, John. And look, by the way, this is the best part about all this. A competent offensive coordinator in Pep Hamilton. I would like to see it, but my only concern would be after you send those draft picks, once again, Samuel, 26 years old, what would be the financial burden he will bring? Because the only reason why Samuel and Brown, are so-called on the trade block as of right now is because they're looking for a new contract.
Yeah, and if we're talking about A.J. Brown, there's no way we can talk about A.J. Brown, who plays in the division, and not talk about a new addition to the division in Christian Kirk and the contract he just received. And if I'm A.J. Brown or if I'm Debo Samuel, I'm looking at that and I'm like, you know what? I got what? And then I got this, but I did this, but this is what y'all offer, but this is what he. Yeah, man, I ain't taking that. And I think for Houston, we've gone back and forth throughout the free agency period, and I think the consensus idea has been: will Houston land a marquee big free agent or trade for somebody that will be, eventually a big free agent? No, we've always had the conversation of tier 2 player. Maybe you get a bottom tier 1 player who, will be on this third contract, but we've been consistently looking at tier 2 players. I think this isn't what Houston game plan is for this year. Maybe tier 1 comes in next year where they have a ton of money. But right now, a Debo Samuel or an A.J. Brown, Houston can't afford that. I don't think so.
I think they can afford it, like money-wise, but what I will say, and I'm glad that you did bring that up, I think it'll kind of throw a wrench into the rebuilding process because I mean, look, if they were to execute a trade for one of these guys, there goes the number 3 pick, possibly number 13 pick, and whatever the hell else these organizations going to ask for. You have Samuel, but you still got holes in your secondary. You have Samuel, but your defensive line, I mean, it's decent, but it could be better. Your backfield is still a head scratcher. So, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I would like to see it, but I think this is one of those, you just gotta be patient, and just let the rebuilding process play out. I'm glad that you brought that point up, John.
Yeah, and I think, well, number one, that number 3 overall pick won't be up for grabs
I
in a
don't know
trade for either.
for Samuel.
No, 13, I can see Houston, using that as a talking point. Number 3 for a receiver is way too high. But
I guess I see your point.
I can see Houston just kind of holding out, like you mentioned. This isn't necessarily the direction we want to go to. Maybe because they don't want to sink in a lot of money at the receiver position after they just sunk in a good deal of money at the receiver position to Brandon Cooks, who deserves it. And as much as we've seen them kind of promote and back Davis Mills, hey, this next year is very important to whether or not you're going to fully invest the entire offense in him. You don't want to get one of those receivers where if I'm Deebo Samuels, hey, man, I don't want to go play for a team that I just have to play with Jimmy Garoppolo, who, by the way, you know what I mean? So, but it will be interesting to see how that works out. Once those players take the name out the bio and take those pictures off their page, kind of scrub their social media, it's trouble in paradise. Thank you for checking out the Locked On Texan podcast. Make sure you are subscribing to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube at Locked On Texans and follow us on Twitter as well.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.